the Youth League's demands. I'm now joined by the ANC Youth League's spokesperson, Mlondi Mkhize. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and we are quite grateful for inviting us to your program.
All right, let's start at the beginning. What informed this current campaign?
Well, first of all is that I think we, like any other organization, will want to put pressure on ABSA to pay back the money that is due to South Africa.
Okay, how do you know they owe money? That's what I'm trying to get at. On what basis?
Well, just a brief history of how ABSA got to owe South Africa government money. ABSA
how do you know this? Is it the Public Protector's report? What is it that gave you this information?
Part of it is the Public Protector's report.
But it was leaked. It's not final yet.
Well, you see, I'm quite sure that we're not going to argue about the leak and the lack thereof, because the reports in the Public Protector's office have been leaked and no one has been saying...
But all I'm trying to ascertain is that it could change, and you're taking action on something that is not final.
Well, I don't know whether it would change the fact that Bankorp, which was given 1.245 billion by the Reserve Bank, was given. If you are saying that would change, that would be something very strange, because that is factual. They were given. And out of that money, they took 400 million, invested it in a Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank gave them in an interest of 1%. When they invested in the Reserve Bank, they then demanded 16%. The rest of them, they went and bought government bonds. When ABSA bought Bankorp, they bought that with those properties, including the responsibility of paying back the money of government.
So the previous inquiries that went into investigating this, have you ignored their findings? Have you read their findings? Because you're coming up with a slightly different version of events.
Well, we would continue to wait for the final version of the Public Protector's report to finalize this matter. And by the way, we're not the only organization that has been saying this. I'm sure that if we were to put it nicely in Zulu, Abavusi Benyamazane would be the PLF, the organization led by Mkhize. So those are the people that have been campaigning day in, day out for this kind of a report. And it seems that there is something that we ought to follow. And from where we are sitting, it looks like our government ought to pay special attention to the financial sector, because there's a lot of things that are going on.
Why now? In 2000, the Reserve Bank Governor, Tito Mboweni, asked a panel of experts to look into this issue. Are you saying that up until this Public Protector's report, you had no idea of what was going on?
Well, you see, the question that you're asking is correct. Unfortunately, time would not permit to give an appropriate response. I can account for the year 2000. I was not in the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
But the ANC's man was Reserve Bank Governor.
Well, the fact that Tito Mboweni, Comrade Tito Mboweni, was in the Reserve Bank does not suggest that we are thinking like he is thinking. So we are thinking differently from how he was thinking, and we are acting from a different responsibility and position from where he was acting.
So he got it wrong?
Well, we're not saying he got it wrong. Maybe the office that he found himself in kind of confined him. We're not confined.
He was captured by his office.
Well, I don't know whether you call it captured. You see, sometimes when you are in an office, you ought to act in a certain manner because you carry certain responsibilities. Unfortunately, we have got a responsibility of ensuring that fiscus is given money.
Why ABSA in particular? I mean, the reports are that, if we look at the SABC report, that there were many people that were involved in apartheid-era looting. 26 billion is an amount that's been brought up. Why are you going after just ABSA's 2.2 billion?
You see, the point that we ought to make is that we're not going after ABSA. We are starting with ABSA. So when you are saying we're going after ABSA, it looks like we're targeting only ABSA. No. We are starting with them. We are going to continue. But you would know that we've raised an issue with ABSA before. We said that ABSA colluded with Goldman Sachs in terms of devaluing the rand. So when we continue to find these things, we then said, let us start with an animal that at least we understand, that we have dealt with, so that as we continue to deal with other strange phenomena, we have dealt with the animal that we understand.
All right, let's talk about the animal that you understand. The panel of experts in 2000 found that actually going after ABSA would be incorrect, because the people that benefited at the time were Sanlam shareholders, which were the public, and not ABSA itself, Sanlam policyholders and pension fund beneficiaries, and also minority shareholders of Bankorp, which means that ABSA isn't the person you should be going after. It is actually those policyholders at Sanlam.
Well, one thing that we're quite certain of is that Bankorp was bought by ABSA. Now, we want that money which they benefited by buying Bankorp, because we can't suggest that ABSA never benefited in the proceeds that the Bankorp made in investments. That would be wrong.
Okay, so I've got a concerned citizen, Tsepo Mohapi, who's been tweeting, who says, does the ANC Youth League boycott disruption of ABSA, will it disrupt ABSA organized events like the PSL games and other things that they sponsor, like athletics?
Well, we are dealing with ABSA, the institution. If it means that for them to pay back the money, it means we must go and interact with PSL, would have to do so. But for now, we are dealing with the bank, and that's why only when Durban, you know, most people were saying that eThekwini region disrupted the functioning of ABSA. They were calling, because of the manner that they were calling, they could not get responses. Then they decided to go inside the bank to withdraw their accounts. Some of them wanted to open accounts. Then, because there were many of them, then people started to be scared. But the point we're making is that we'll continue to visit ABSA. We'll continue to put pressure to ensure that ABSA pays back the money.
So are you saying that people shouldn't go to ABSA-sponsored events?
Well, we would get to that point. For now, we are still negotiating with them. When we get a sense that they are not willing to pay back the money.
But they say that they don't owe it, and previous inquiries suggest that they don't owe it. How will they suddenly owe it?
Well, I don't know whether previous inquiries suggest that they did not buy Bankorp, because if those inquiries suggest so, then we would understand. But if they suggest that they bought Bankorp at a fair market value, then it means that they are responsible for paying back the money. You can't suggest to me that when you buy a car, then you say, but when I took it out of the garage, I did not see that there was one tire with a slow puncher. From that point onwards, when you take it, the slow puncher is your responsibility.
Yeah, but if you buy that car and there's somebody who sold you the car wasn't being forthcoming with some of the defects, you can't be held responsible for that.
I'm not too sure. You see, you will have to request learned people and experts to explain to us what is due diligence that was done before the bank was bought.
The timing is also curious. You know, we're in the middle now of what looks like is going to be quite a race for office, and that there's perhaps some infighting taking place within your own party. And some people might say that, you know, all of this is just about scoring points with certain people, certain ministers, for example.
I'm not too sure whether there is a minister that owns ABSA. But if there is a minister that owns ABSA, it's unfortunate. We want the money. He will continue to be a shareholder at ABSA so long as we get the money. And I think that if there are ministers and comrades that are owning and have got shares at ABSA, it is their responsibility to encourage other shareholders to give us the money so that we begin to fund free education, build infrastructure, give young people skills and expertise to develop themselves. That's what we want the money for. We're not dealing with any settling or any square point of scoring. We understand ABSA to be an institution that provides financial services to our country, and that whoever has got a relationship with ABSA, it is their affair. It is not the affair of the African National Congress Youth League or that of the African National Congress. Our understanding is very simple, that the elective conference of the ANC has got, there is no voting delegate called ABSA in the elective conference of the ANC. Nor are we going to have a branch that is going to be called ABSA. There would be no one that would be called ABSA. So we're dealing with a financial institution. We're not dealing with people who would be standing for conference, unless you are saying that maybe you've verified with Home Affairs, Comrade Malusiki Club has confirmed that there is an individual called ABSA. Then we might be worried. But if it's an institution, not an individual, we are less concerned, really.
Is this campaign sanctioned by the African National Congress?
This campaign is sanctioned by the African National Congress Youth League.
What is the African National Congress saying about it?
Well, we have not heard anything from the African National Congress in relation to this campaign, and I'm quite sure that you would acknowledge that the African National Congress Youth League in its own constitution and that of the African National Congress, identifies and acknowledges that the African National Congress Youth League is autonomous, but part of the integral body of the African National Congress. That autonomy would speak to the Youth League being able to run its own affairs, identifying its own campaigns. What makes us to be the integral part of the African National Congress is the fact that we can make policy deviations from that of the African National Congress. What we'll rather do is to sponsor our thinking to the African National Congress up until the African National Congress's policies are aligned to that what we're thinking. Now, there is no policy that says we can't request money from ABSA. There is no policy that says we can't protest against financial institutions. And in fact, from where we're standing, it begins to confirm the fact that we ought to be calling as society for a judicial inquiry in the financial services sector to look at more other interesting matters that seems to be hidden.
Okay, so what happens now? Will you continue to occupy ABSA branches? What's the end game?
Well, you'll ask me the end game of the 10th of February. You'd know the end game on the 10th of February of this year.
Okay.
Yes.
And if I've got an account with ABSA, what must I do as a black person?
We encourage all South Africans to withdraw their accounts with ABSA. They can go bank with Nedbank, FNB, or any other branch. And we encourage that the Reserve Bank should stop fast-tracking, in fact, frustrating the opening of the post office as a fully fledged bank, because we want all South Africans to bank with a South African bank, which is going to take the interest, the revenue that it generates to help fund fiscals, to help fund free education, to help fund infrastructure, to help our young people outside there, because the proceeds that we get from ABSA, FNP and Nedbank, those are private profits that are accumulated by people who end up getting billions and billions. And when we say that it is not sufficient that South Africans can be told that their minimum wage could be less than 5,000, we are told that we are ridiculous. But when we ask those people who are shareholders and multimillionaires whether their kids or themselves can live with 5,000 rand a day, they will tell you it's impossible. How do you expect a person to survive with 5,000 rand a month? That's why we're saying
we've run out of time, but very briefly, if the final public protector's report exonerates ABSA, will you stop this action?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That was Mlondi Mkhize, the spokesperson for the ANC Youth League, talking to us about their ABSA Pay Back the Money campaign.